In the corroded heart of Cell Block D, the inmates breathed by a single unspoken commandment: you don't cross Officer Miller. To the population of broken men, he was less a guard and more a force of nature, a monster sculpted from malice and cheap authority. I knew him as something far more intimate, something much worse: my brother's keeper. He had no idea I was in his kingdom, a ghost in a gray uniform, and I was about to use the one secret that bound them together to ignite his entire corrupt empire and watch it burn to the cold, concrete ground. My name is Mark Riley, and for 2 agonizing years, I've put on the same stiff gray uniform of a correctional officer at Blackwood Penitentiary. I wish I could tell you I took this job for some noble, righteous reason, that I was answering a calling to serve and protect. But the truth is a whole lot heavier, a weight that settled in my bones the day I took the oath. The truth was locked in a 6-by-9-foot cell 3 blocks over, serving a 7 to 10 for a crime that wasn't entirely his fault. My little brother, Liam. I took this job to be near him, to become a shadow watching his back, a desperate, silent promise to make sure the grinding gears of the system didn't just chew him up and spit out what was left. It was a secret that sat like a lead weight in my gut every single time I clocked in, a lie of omission that made me complicit in the very world I was trying to shield him from. Blackwood is its own sovereign nation. It's a city of poured concrete and cold-rolled steel that hums with a palpable tension, a low-frequency vibration you can feel in your teeth. The air itself is a character in this story, a thick, suffocating cocktail of industrial bleach, the stale sweat of 1,000 anxious men, and the lingering odor of cheap, boiled food. It's a place of constant, jarring noise, the percussive slam of steel doors that sounds like a final judgment, the incessant, frantic squawk of radios spitting out codes and commands, the constant, indecipherable murmur of 1,000 private conversations bouncing off the walls and into a meaningless drone. But beneath all that cacophony, there's a profound silence. It's the language of unspoken rules, of brutal hierarchies that run everything with more authority than any warden's decree. You learn that language fast, or you don't last. Not as an inmate, and most definitely not as a guard. And in this grim, self-contained world, Officer Miller was the undisputed king. He wasn't the warden, not even a captain with stripes on his sleeve. Just a line officer, same rank and pay as me, but he ran Cell Block D with the absolute authority of a warlord. Miller was a physically imposing man, not exceptionally tall, but wide, built like a brick shithouse with a neck that ate his collar and a face permanently stuck in a sneer of casual contempt. He walked the block with a predatory swagger, a rolling gait that dared you to look him in the eye, to challenge his dominion. The inmates were profoundly, existentially terrified of him, and the other officers? They just looked the other way, content to let the sleeping dragon lie as long as it kept the block quiet. The man was untouchable, insulated by layers of fear and complicity. I saw why pretty early on. During my first few months, I was a floater, learning the ropes on different blocks, getting a feel for the prison's unique ecosystems. One afternoon in D Block, I saw this young kid, Perez, barely 20, get a letter from home. He was sitting on his bunk, the harsh overhead lights catching the glint of tears in his eyes, but he was actually smiling, probably for the first time in weeks. Miller, moving with the unnatural silence of a shark, saw it too. He strolled over, his boots making no sound on the polished concrete, and just snatched the letter from the kid's hand. "What's this, Perez?" "Love letter from Mommy." Miller's voice dripped with a thick, syrupy mockery. He unfolded it, his fat fingers crinkling the thin paper, and started reading it out loud. His voice, a grating baritone, boomed through the pod, twisting the simple, loving words of the boy's mother into something pathetic and ugly, stripping them of all their warmth and turning them into a weapon of humiliation. The other inmates just stared at the floor, at their hands, at anything but the scene unfolding before them. Perez, his face a burning mask of shame, got to his feet. "Hey, man, come on. Give that back." Miller's smile vanished as if it had never been there. He slowly, deliberately, crumpled the letter into a tight, dense ball. "What did you say to me, inmate?" The kid's flicker of courage dissolved instantly into a puddle of fear. "Nothing, officer." "I said nothing." Miller tossed the crumpled letter into a nearby trash can like it was garbage. "That's what I thought." Then, turning to the rest of the pod, his voice rang with false authority. "Attention! Surprise cell toss for the entire range. Looks like you all need a reminder of who's in charge." For the next hour, he and his cronies tore the place apart, confiscating commissary items, dumping family photos onto the floor, appending mattresses, all because a kid had the nerve to get a letter from his mom and smile. Nobody said a word. Nobody filed a complaint. That was the source of Miller's power. It wasn't just physical bullying, it was sophisticated psychological warfare. It was the casual, unpredictable cruelty that kept everyone perpetually off balance and terrified. He didn't just enforce the rules, he was the rule. I learned quickly to keep my head down, do my job, and stay invisible. My entire focus was Liam. He was in B block, medium security. It was still prison, a cage is a cage, but it was manageable. It was a world away from Miller's D block. We developed a system, a silent language. On my rounds, I'd pass his cell, give a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He'd nod back from his bunk. It was our way of saying, "I'm here. I see you. You're not alone." It was a lifeline in a sea of despair. I made sure his paperwork was always in perfect order, that he stayed off everyone's radar, a gray man in a gray world. I thought I could protect him from the predators, from the guys like Miller. I thought I had it all under control. That was my first and most arrogant mistake. My worst nightmare came true on a Tuesday. The new transfer list was posted in the guard station, a simple sheet of paper that held the power to append lives. And I saw his name, Liam Riley, moving from B block to D block. To Miller's kingdom. My blood went ice cold, a frigid slush in my veins. It wasn't random. I knew it instantly. Transfers like that, for an inmate with a record as clean as Liam's, they don't just happen. They're arranged. They're orchestrated. I went straight to my sergeant, a tired old bull named Davis. "Sarge, there has to be a mistake on this transfer sheet. This inmate, Riley, he's a model prisoner. He has no business being in D block." I fought to keep my voice professional level, but I could feel the panic clawing at the base of my throat, a feral animal trying to get out. He just shrugged, a gesture of profound indifference, not even bothering to look up from the sports page spread across his desk. Consolidation. Riley. B block's overcrowded. Miller's got open beds. It is what it is. It was a lazy, transparent lie, and we both knew it. I pushed, my desperation overriding my caution. He's enrolled in the vocational program for kitchen services. He's got a steady job in the laundry. Moving him to D block disrupts all of that. It's punitive for no reason. That's when a shadow fell over the desk, eclipsing the fluorescent light. It was Miller. He'd been standing there, listening, a predator drawn to the scent of distress. He put a heavy, proprietary hand on my shoulder, one of those fake-friendly gestures that feels more like a threat. "Don't you worry about your inmate, Mark," he said, his voice a low, confidential rumble. He leaned in close, and his breath, rank with the smell of stale coffee and something sour, washed over me. "I'll take real good care of him. After all," he paused, letting the words hang in the air between us, "what are brothers for?" He knew. The bastard knew. And he was flaunting it, rubbing my face in his power. He had pulled the strings, made the calls, and had Liam delivered to him like a package. It was a message, a power play directed squarely at me. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The game had just changed. I wasn't an observer anymore. I was a player on Miller's board, and he had just captured my king. Liam's first week in D block was quiet. Too quiet. It was the unnerving silence of a mouse in a room with a cat. I'd see him during the morning and evening counts, his face pale and drawn, his eyes darting around nervously like a cornered animal searching for an escape that didn't exist. I tried to catch his eye, to give him our signal, the small nod of solidarity, but he wouldn't look at me. He was already terrified, already conditioned. It was then that I started to see how Miller's operation really worked, the intricate machinery beneath the surface-level brutality. I started paying closer attention, taking my breaks in the observation bubble overlooking D block, piecing together whispers and veiled conversations. Miller wasn't just a sadist, he was a businessman. He ran the block's entire black market, a sprawling enterprise dealing in everything from better mattresses and burner phones to narcotics and protection. Some inmates paid by having their families on the outside wire money to anonymous accounts. Others paid in information, becoming Miller's eyes and ears, his network of spies. And the ones who couldn't pay, the ones with no money and no connections? They became his pawns, his enforcers, his delivery boys. If you were in his system, you were untouchable. Your cell was never tossed. You got extra phone time, double food portions. You were protected. But if you refused to play, you were the one who, randomly, failed a drug test. You were the one whose visiting privileges suddenly got revoked because of a clerical error. It was a well-oiled machine of corruption and fear, and Miller was its chief architect and sole beneficiary. And my brother Liam was now a cog in that machine. It started small, with petty humiliations designed to soften him up, to break him. Miller had Liam cleaning the guard station toilets, a demeaning, pointless job. He'd make him stand for count for hours on end, claiming he'd miscounted the pod, forcing Liam to stand at attention until his legs trembled. It was petty, grinding harassment, designed to wear him down. I'd walk past and see Liam, his face a mask of bone-deep exhaustion, and my hands would ball into useless fists in my pockets. I felt completely, utterly helpless. The uniform I wore was a barrier, not a shield. I finally caught a moment alone with him in a service corridor. "Liam, are you okay? What's going on? Talk to me." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the grimy floor, his shoulders hunched. "I'm fine, Mark. Just leave it alone. Please. Leave it alone. Liam, he's using you. He knows who you are. This is about me." His head snapped up, and for a fleeting second, I saw the fire of the brother I grew up with, the defiance I hadn't seen in years. "And what are you gonna do? Huh? Report him? You think they'll believe an inmate over an officer? You'll just get me thrown in solitary for the rest of my sentence. You don't get it, Mark. You wear the uniform. You're one of them now. You can't help me in here. You can only make it worse. Just stay away." He was right. Any overt move I made would bring Miller's full, unrestrained wrath down on him. His words hit me like a physical punch to the gut. He felt abandoned, and I felt like a coward hiding behind a badge. The uniform that was supposed to let me protect him had become a wall between us. Then it got worse. Much worse. I started seeing Miller handing Liam small, discreet packages to deliver to other inmates during shift changes. Liam was his delivery boy. My brother, who couldn't even watch a gangster movie without getting anxious, was now an active participant in a prison contraband ring. The change in him was terrifying. He lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. Dark, bruised circles formed under his eyes. He moved with the paranoid, frantic energy of a man standing on a cliff's edge in a high wind. The breaking point, the moment my simmering fear and helpless rage turned into a cold, hard resolve, was because of an old man named Pops. Pops was a lifer, inside for 30 years, and he ran the prison library cart. He was this quiet, dignified man, respected by everyone, inmates and most guards alike. And Miller hated him for it. He hated that Pops commanded a quiet authority that Miller, with all his bluster and violence, could never touch. Point one morning, the alarms blared for a full, block-wide shakedown. Miller was front and center, a gleam of malicious excitement in his eye. He made a beeline for the library, for Pop's small cell in the corner. And of course, they found it. A package of narcotics, tucked neatly inside a hollowed-out copy of Moby Dick. Pop swore he'd never seen it before in his life. I knew he was telling the truth. We all did. But the evidence was there, planted and pristine. I was standing post at the far end of the tier, watching it all unfold, my stomach churning. And I saw Liam. He was pressed against a wall halfway down the block, his face ashen, looking like he was about to be violently sick. Our eyes met across the chaos, and in that single devastating moment, I knew. He was involved. Maybe Miller forced him to plant it, maybe he just forced him to stay quiet about who did. It didn't matter. He was part of it. His silence had been bought with his safety. They took Pops away. His upcoming parole hearing, his first in 15 long years, was gone. He was headed for the SHU, for solitary, then a transfer to a supermax facility. His life, what little hope remained of it, was over. All because Miller wanted to make an example of him and snuff out a light he couldn't control. I looked at Miller, standing there with a smug, satisfied look on his face. Then I looked at my brother, being visibly eaten alive by guilt. And something inside me just snapped. The part of me that was playing by the rules, the part that was afraid, it just died. This wasn't about surviving anymore. This was about retribution. He had used my brother to destroy a good man. I wasn't just a guard anymore. I was a hunter. And Officer Miller was my prey. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat at my small kitchen table, the city lights a distant, indifferent blur, and I started writing down everything. Every smirk, every whispered threat, every rumor I'd ever heard about Miller's operations. My own secret, unsanctioned investigation had begun. I couldn't go to the warden. Miller had friends in high places, and his record was spotless on paper. I was on my own. I had to be smarter, more patient, more ruthless than him. Miller built his empire on fear and shadows. I was going to tear it down with the truth. My investigation felt like punching a concrete wall for weeks. Miller was careful, meticulous. His entire operation was built on inmate testimony, which is legally worthless, and a pervasive fear, which you can't document or enter into evidence. I spent weeks just watching, taking notes in a small, coded notebook, looking for a single crack in his armor. I even tried to find an ally, an older officer named Henderson who was close to retirement and seemed to see everything. "Henderson," I said one day in the break room, trying to sound casual as I poured my coffee. "You ever see an officer get this much power on a block?" He took a slow, deliberate sip of his coffee, his eyes appraising me over the rim of the cup. "Power's a funny thing in here, Riley. Some guys earn it with respect. Others, they gotta buy it. Or blackmail it." He looked me right in the eye, a silent warning passing between us. "Be careful who you go poking. Especially Miller. Some secrets are buried deep for a damned good reason." Blackmail. That one word stuck with me, echoing Henderson's warning. Miller had something on someone powerful. Or, more likely, someone had something on him. But who? And what? I changed tactics. I stopped focusing on what Miller was doing now and started digging into who he was. I spent my nights lost in the digital rabbit hole of public records, old social media profiles, and archived news sites. It was a dead end, a series of blank walls, until I found it, a tiny, digitized article from a small-town paper dated 15 years ago. A convenience store robbery gone wrong. 2 teenagers involved. One was caught at the scene, Marcus Thorne. The other, his accomplice, got away clean. I went to work the next day with a knot in my stomach and pulled up Miller's personnel file. His birth name wasn't Miller. It was Michael Thorne. My heart started pounding against my ribs, a frantic, syncopated drumbeat. It couldn't be a coincidence. His juvenile record was sealed, a bureaucratic fortress. Impossible to get through official channels. I knew I had to cross a line, one I could never uncross. I called an old friend from the academy, a guy named Dave who was now a city cop with access to state and federal databases. It was a huge risk. If he reported me for an unauthorized query, my career was over and I could face charges. But then I pictured Liam's haunted face. I pictured Pops being led away, his dignity stripped from him. I made the call. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Dave. "Mark, this is crazy. Your guy, Michael Thorne, a.k.a. Officer Miller. He was the second suspect in that armed robbery. But he flipped. He testified against his older brother, Marcus. Gave him up completely. Michael got a slap on the wrist, probation, and a sealed record. Marcus Thorne took the whole weight. Got 20 to life. Where is Marcus Thorne now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, already knowing the answer. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're kidding me." "Mark, he's an inmate at Blackwood Penitentiary. Has been for the last 14 years. Suddenly, the entire horrifying puzzle snapped together with a sickening click. I pulled up Marcus Thorne in the prison database. He was a lifer in D Block. Kept to himself. No write-ups, no trouble. A model prisoner. The inmates called him Ghost. Henderson's words came screaming back to me. Blackmail. Miller wasn't buying Ghost's silence with perks and protection. He was being blackmailed. Ghost, the brother he betrayed, held the ultimate power over him. If Ghost ever decided to tell the population of D-Block that the big, bad Officer Miller was not only a former street criminal but a snitch who sold out his own blood to save himself, Miller's empire of fear would crumble in an instant. The inmates would eat him alive, and he knew it. And then the final, sickening piece fell into place. Liam. Why my brother? It was perfect, diabolical insulation. Miller couldn't be seen dealing directly with his brother, the Ghost. So he found another inmate to be the go-between, the delivery boy for the hush money and contraband. And who better to use, who better to control, than a green inmate he knew had a guard for a brother? If Liam ever got caught, who would the administration believe? A convicted felon, or a decorated correctional officer with a pristine record? Miller was using my family to protect himself from his own. The rage I felt was no longer hot and impotent. It was a solid block of ice in my chest. Cold, hard, and brutally focused. My plan began to form, not in a flash of inspiration, but forged slowly in the fires of my anger. I couldn't just expose Miller to the warden. That would drag my brother down too, and the key evidence was illegally obtained. I had to prove Liam was coerced. I had to save him and destroy Miller in one single, calculated move. I had to create a situation where Miller had no choice but to expose himself. He thought he was playing chess, moving my brother around the board like a disposable pawn. He was about to find out that the pawn had its own game to play. My chance came a week later. Internal Affairs was scheduled for a major, unannounced inspection of the facility. The tip-off was anonymous, from me, sent from a burner phone bought with cash. The information I gave was just vague enough, rumors of a widespread contraband ring in D-Block, to trigger a full, high-level sweep without putting Miller on specific alert. The night before the inspection, I found Liam at evening chow. The mess hall was a cacophony of noise, but our table felt like a silent vacuum. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold his fork. I sat across from him, leaning in. "Liam," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Tomorrow morning, IA is hitting this block. They're going to tear it apart. It's all coming down. I need you to do one last thing for me. One last delivery for Miller." He looked at me, his eyes wide with pure panic. "No, Mark. No more. I can't." "Listen to me," I insisted, my gaze holding his. "This is the one that saves you. This is the one that ends it all. You have to trust me, Liam. Please. Trust me one more time." I slid a small, tightly wrapped package across the slick surface of the table. "Give this to Ghost. Tonight. Tell him it's the usual drop from Miller." He stared at the package, then at me, a war of fear and hope playing out on his face. He gave a short, jerky nod, snatched the package, and disappeared back into the river of inmates. The package didn't contain drugs or a phone. It contained a note I'd painstakingly written to mimic Miller's blocky handwriting. "IA is sniffing around. This is the last drop. We're done." But the real bait, the piece of the trap that only I could identify, was inside the wrapping, a 1987 silver dollar. My grandfather's lucky coin, something I carried with me every day. It wasn't contraband, but it was mine, and it was now the linchpin of my entire plan. The next morning, D-Block was a storm of controlled chaos. The warden was there, flanked by 3 grim-faced suits from IA, and a dozen extra guards, including me. Miller was there, of course, playing the part of the concerned, cooperative officer, but I could see the fine sheen of sweat on his upper lip. They started tossing cells, one by one. Nothing. The IA suits were getting impatient, their faces tightening with annoyance. This was my moment. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "Warden," I said, my voice projecting across the suddenly quiet block. "The inmate in 7D, Marcus Thorne, he's quiet. Sometimes those are the ones you need to look at the closest." Miller shot me a look of pure, unadulterated venom. He was trapped. To object would be to arouse suspicion. "Go ahead," he grunted, waving a dismissive hand. "Waste of time." The guards searched Ghost's cell. It was sparse, almost monastic. They found nothing. I felt a spike of raw panic. Did Liam not do it? Did he get scared? "Check the mattress," I said, my voice a little too loud, a little too strained. A guard took a knife and sliced the thin mattress open. And there it was. The package. An IA suit picked it up with a gloved hand. He carefully unwrapped it, his eyes scanning the note, then he tipped the contents into his palm. He looked at the silver dollar, confused. Ghost, standing silently in the corner of his cell, saw the note in the agent's hand. He saw the words, "Last drop." He panicked. His lifeline, his protection, his entire arrangement was being cut. Miller was abandoning him. "You son of a bitch, Miller!" Ghost screamed, the name echoing like a gunshot through the silent block. He lunged forward before 2 guards could restrain him. "You're not cutting me loose. Not after what I did for you. Not after I took the whole fall." The entire block went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "What is he talking about, Officer Miller?" the warden asked, his voice dangerously quiet, all pretense gone. Miller forced a laugh, a strangled, ugly sound. "He's a con, Warden. A desperate lifer. He's just making things up to cut a deal. I saw my opening. The final nail. The checkmate. I stepped forward again." "Warden, I don't know what he's talking about with all that," I lied smoothly, my voice a mask of calm professionalism. "But that coin, that's my grandfather's lucky silver dollar. I noticed it was missing from my locker this morning. I must have dropped it at the guard station last night when I was signing out." I looked right at Miller, locking his terrified gaze with my own. "I'm just really curious how my personal keepsake ended up inside a package of supposed contraband." "Aren't you, Officer Miller?" Miller's face went completely white, the color draining from it as if a plug had been pulled. He was caught. Irrevocably. Ghost's explosive accusation. The incriminating note. And the coin. The impossible, undeniable link connecting him, the package, and the blackmailed inmate he swore he had no connection to. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked from my cold, steady gaze to the warden's hardening expression, to the smirking faces of the inmates who were finally witnessing the fall of their tyrant, and he knew. The game was over. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Miller. He was suspended on the spot, his badge and keys taken from him right there on the tier. As 2 guards I once considered his allies escorted him out, his trademark swagger was gone, replaced by the slow, defeated shuffle of a broken man. He didn't even look at me. With Miller gone, the dam of fear that had held D-Block in its grip for years finally broke. Ghost, seeing he had nothing left to lose, told Internal Affairs everything. The robbery 15 years ago, how his younger brother Michael Thorne had betrayed him on the witness stand, and how Officer Miller had been paying for his silence with contraband and protection ever since. Liam was brought in, and with me by his side, he told them the truth, that Miller knew he was my brother and used that leverage to force him to be a mule, threatening both of us if he refused. My status as a guard, coupled with the mountain of evidence now piling up against Miller, made Liam's story credible. For his own safety, he was moved to protective custody. Miller was fired and faced a slate of federal charges ranging from drug distribution to extortion and obstruction of justice. His empire, built on whispers and fear, was now dust. The subsequent investigation was thorough, rooting out 2 other guards who were on his payroll. The entire power structure of Blackwood was shaken to its very core. A new kind of quiet settled over D-Block. The electric hum of fear was gone. It was still prison, still a hard and unforgiving place, but it was no longer a kingdom ruled by a petty, sadistic tyrant. Liam's cooperation, and the extreme duress he was under, earned him a favorable review with the parole board. He still had a debt to society to pay, but the heavy shadow that had been suffocating him was finally lifted. For the first time in years, when I saw him through the visitor's glass, I saw real hope in his eyes. Our relationship, strained to the breaking point by secrets and circumstance, finally began to heal. The wall between us, made of concrete, steel, secrets, and uniforms, had finally come down. I never set out to be a hero. I was just a man who took a job to watch over his brother, and in doing so, I almost watched him get destroyed. When it came down to it, when all the chips were on the table, I had to choose between the badge and my blood. I chose my brother. I looked into the darkness of a corrupt system, a darkness that was swallowing him whole, and I used that same darkness to drag its monsters kicking and screaming into the light. In a place built on bars and written rules, sometimes the only real law is the one you carry inside yourself. What would you have done in my shoes? If this story resonated with you, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories from the edge. Thanks for listening.